Good afternoon and welcome to another installment of Entrepreneurons brought to you by WARF and UW-Madison Discovery to Projects, or D2P. My name is Laura Heisler and I'm Director of Programming for WARF. And we are really excited about today's session as part of UW-Madison Startup Week and to welcome a new unit on campus and introduce you to them. Before I introduce today's session, I do want to make you aware of a few other events that WARF is hosting. If you want to know more about what's going on UW-Madison Startup Week, please go to innovate.wis.edu for dozens of events taking place between now and November 18th. WARF is featuring an event each day, continuing tomorrow with a session on what to do when you invent something, how to proceed and how to work with WARF if you're on campus, and getting to know a little bit more about intellectual property. We're taking a break over the weekend and then coming back on Monday with a session on how to work with outside agreements, consulting agreements, conflicts of interest, etc. And a lot of you interested in today's session might find yourselves needing some of that guidance from UW-Madison experts and experts at WARF. On Tuesday, we are bringing a session together looking at programs across the country and in the Midwest that can be good models for how to engage more non-traditional and often underrepresented entrepreneurs in programs, including women and people of color, and ways that UW-Madison can up its games in terms of meeting the challenges that those entrepreneurs face and helping them get connected. And then we're rounding out the week with our annual WARF Innovation Day on November 18th at 2 p.m. And if you're interested in any of these events, you can send us an email at info@warf.org or go to warf.org and go to the programming tab to see a link to sign up for any of these events. I also want to mention that today's events and all of the events that WARF is hosting during Startup Week are being recorded, and you can find the videos at warf.org at this tab as well. With that, I'm going to take just a moment to create a little bit of context and introduce you to today's session. As I mentioned, we are really excited to feature this new campus unit, the School of Computer, Data, and Information Sciences, which is the newest division in the university's College of Letters and Sciences. Cetus is an important component of the university's dedication to becoming a center of excellence in this growing field. Along with the American Family Insurance Data Sciences Institute, Cetus is helping promote the Wisconsin computing idea, which states that these disciplines are practiced and shared across our entire campus. Earlier this week, on Monday, we had an event that talked about a new program that WARF has, WARF Varsity Venture Studios, which is a program of WARF Ventures. And we're really happy to be a part of this ecosystem. WARF Ventures is actually an active high-tech investor right here on campus, even during COVID, with recent investments in companies like DataChat, AIQ Solutions, and Loom. And we at WARF are very excited about working with Cetus as it advances its host of new initiatives. With that, I am delighted to turn the podium over to Tom Erickson, the founding director of Cetus.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to welcome three amazing individuals back to campus, so to speak, to talk about their experiences. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. I'll just mention quickly something about myself. I'm a Wisconsin alum who went out and did years of entrepreneurship myself. Some 40 years later, I've come back to campus to lead up this effort around computing, data, and information sciences. We're excited about our program. We have the largest major on campus in computer science with almost 2,000 undergraduate students and over 400 graduate students. And those students are represented here today, both by Ram and Venkat. And then we're also very excited to welcome an alum from the business school and Justin, but all of whom have played a big role in creating amazing tech companies. I'm going to let each one of them explain that themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Ram, just to give an intro to everybody. And then we're going to do something different on today's panelists. We're just going to let everybody kind of interact and play off of each other. And hopefully we'll have fun over the next 45 minutes. And then we'll have some time for questions after that. So over to you, Ram.
Sure. Thank you, Tom, and excited to be here. It's really an honor and a privilege to be virtually. Would love to have been there in person in Wisconsin, but technology, it can make miracles happen, right? And so still, it's really, really an honor to be a part of this session today. So I'm a graduate of UW back in '93. I was majored in electrical engineering and then completed additional majors in physics and math. So I'm kind of a science guy, and I was actually Wisconsinite originally. I was born and raised in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So obviously really strong ties to UW. And then UW provided me the foundation for what I was going to do later in life. So from my undergrad, after my undergrad at Wisconsin, I continued through the Big Ten and went to University of Michigan for graduate school, where I did master's and PhD in EE. And then from there, started a career that actually was a series of reinventions. So I started my career doing industrial research and design at Bell Labs, where I was working in areas of telecom and semiconductor physics. And after a few years of that, actually went on a little bit of an entrepreneurial journey where I co-founded a startup that was backed by some leading Silicon Valley venture capitalists that was in the area of actually creating telecom devices for the future of high-speed fiber optics, where we actually built our own semiconductor fabs. I was jealous today, when you build a software company now, you get to rent scale. Back in those days, you actually had to build scale. And in semiconductors, I was actually building your own fab. So that was a wonderful journey, and really learned a lot end to end about how you actually start and get a company off the ground and actually build it to some level of success. And we actually are exited and now we're a part of Broadcom. After that, I thought, boy, but there's really a lot I don't know about business. And so I had the opportunity then to reinvent myself again in an area of called management consulting, where I joined a firm called McKinsey for a few years and led a number of engagements in the area of tech and telco. But really, through that experience, not only understand how kind of big businesses made decisions, so at a different scale, but also understand the trend towards from hardware to software, and seeing the shift to how software was eating the world, as we like to say today now, or as it is consuming the world. And so I actually left McKinsey after about 3 years to go start a company in the area of drones and drone analytics. And not every venture is successful. We actually were a little bit too early. I would say a few years too early in terms of where drones were going to be. Our idea was to actually synthesize information coming from drones. But the rise of prosumer drones hadn't happened. And so there was a little bit of a challenge in getting availability to that data. The API economy was in its infancy at that point. So from there, I actually went again and actually kind of went through a journey of both reinventing myself, both in the areas of sales and corporate strategy, but in software now, joining a company called SAP, which is the world's largest enterprise application software company. I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at that point, and where I took on a number of roles leading SAP's go-to-market strategy, global partner operations strategy, cloud and platform technology strategy, and then ultimately helping set up an area that I'm now, or a strategic business unit that I now lead, which is around really helping SAP, what we call deliver the intelligent enterprise, by investing in and accelerating startup innovation that strategically expands their ecosystem, as well as helping build the next generation of entrepreneurs inside of SAP by creating startups and a startup culture within the SAP ship itself. So kind of have gone full circle in my career, from research to entrepreneurship to big time management consulting to corporate startup, I should say corporate strategy, and now back to helping guide and invest in entrepreneurs again. So that's been my journey, and UW was an incredibly important part of that. So.
Well, thank you.
And it's allowed me to happen to have the fortune of meeting not only good folks yourself, Tom, but people like Justin. So.
with that, well, let's go over to you, Justin, and let's hear a bit about you.
Yeah, thanks, Ram. And appreciate everybody having me on, and great to meet you all. Yeah, just a quick intro on myself. So I'm currently the co-founder of a company called Disco, which Ram and the great team at SAP, we had the fortunate of them having invested in us. So we've been able to work closely with them to help grow and scale our business up. But yeah, before that, born and raised in Wisconsin as well. So 2 hours north of Madison, in Wisconsin Rapids, famously known for the paper mills. But I actually even was smaller than that. I grew up on a dairy farm just outside of Wisconsin Rapids in a little town called Junction City. So yeah, it's rooted in a lot of the Wisconsin origin, and I think everything I have grown and learned from has started there and came through UW. So grew up there, was a graduate from the business school in 2008. I actually, a lot of what my personal journey is anchored in, and there's a couple of themes, but it really is started in curiosity. I think when I got into school, I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and I thought I needed to land on the right idea. But what ended up happening was I spent time working at one of the career centers in UW, and just really fell in love with the music business and sports and entertainment industry. And so I did a couple internships for the Badger Sports Properties, and just coincidentally on the job one day was browsing for opportunities and landed on Jive Records website, and just openly submitted an application to an internship in Manhattan. And fortunately enough, one of the senior executives was looking for advice on how to operate his fantasy football team, because I was doing some ghostwriting for a fantasy football magazine. So he thought by bringing me on as an intern, I could help his fantasy football odds, which was just poor strategy because I think he ended up last in his league that year. But that sort of got me down the path of saying, okay, I'm really passionate and curious about the future of the entertainment industry. And I interned for a couple different pretty high profile executives there. One being Clive Davis, who runs Jive Records, J Records. So Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey. I organized a lot of vitamin water for Clive in Manhattan. And then I spent some time working for Sean Combs, Bad Boy Entertainment. Some pretty funny stories about that experience. But the macro trend that I observed was there was just so much disruption happening in the music business, and everything that we were seeing. And I remember creating my first Facebook profile while I was at the Surf, and just thinking, what is going on here? The way that content is being exchanged and changing is happening right before our eyes. And so I was really drawn to the Valley. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple of really close friends take a role at Intuit in a rotational program there that said, hey, if you're interested in this stuff and you need to get closer to the action, you should take the leap and just try to learn as much as you can. So I was fortunate enough to get recruited into Intuit as a product manager, and really got a taste of what it was like to build experiences for small businesses and for people, and learn the ins and outs of, I'm the least technical person probably in this entire Zoom meeting, but it was really eye-opening for me to see how fast you could put something out and iterate on it and really get customer feedback and build value there. And so that led me down a path where I started to use more of Intuit's HR systems, and in the nature of being curious, sort of saw that there were a lot of broken processes around how feedback was getting exchanged within companies. And I grew to sort of manage a larger distributed team. And this was pre-COVID, and we can talk about this as sort of a secondary topic, but we've discovered that there was this really interesting opportunity as more and more folks were working in a distributed fashion to help them feel more connected and engaged in their jobs. And so that's ultimately what led me to found Disco, which is right now it's the leading culture platform inside of the systems that folks use every day to communicate, on top of platforms like Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts chat, Facebook Workplace. We help companies bring their culture and values into these spaces. I actually co-founded the company with my brother, Jeremy, who's also a UW Badger, who actually, he should be expecting a new arrival any hour now, actually. So some exciting, the Vandehey front is growing, we're growing. But yeah, and we've had the good fortune of, again, like I said, working really closely with Ram. I'll just say this about, the connection to UW. I think it really was the foundation for me to encourage me to explore and try a lot of different things. And I think at the core of this journey is both curiosity, and I'll touch on the grit piece, because the entrepreneurial journey is definitely one that requires both. And yeah, just really fortunate to be here and excited to share what I've learned across the journey.
That's fantastic, Justin. Now, someone who's taken a slightly different journey, Venkat, from your origins. You're not a Wisconsin native, but you drank the Kool-Aid in your time here. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself. So.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Thanks everyone for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to connect again with everybody at Madison. I hope you pick up. We are helpful. Whatever we can share through our experiences help you in whatever decisions you are looking at right now. A little bit about myself. I grew up in South India in a town called Trichy in Tamil Nadu, which is a southernmost state in India, in the peninsula. There, I did my bachelor's back in India, and the first flight I ever took was an international flight to Chicago O'Hare to get to Madison. And that was in 2000, August of 2000 to be exact. And I did my master's in the computer sciences department, work with amazing people, too many people that I owe a lot of my like foundational learnings that to this day I feel like guides us and guides me through everything that we're doing through the careers. Just spectacular faculty, amazing facilities that really gave me an opportunity to go and do some interesting things since graduation. I spent about 5 years at Oracle working with just amazing people, a lot of Badgers there, and was actually one Badger that actually hired me. She was my manager, first manager out of school, was somebody who still have a very strong relationship, and she's actually one of the runs the alumni club here in the Bay Area, so she's still very much connected. And after 5 years at Oracle, I wanted to kind of challenge myself, and I started working at Facebook back in 2007, and I was there for 8 years, from 2007 until 2015. Worked with some amazing people, and again was maybe flying in at least once back to UW for recruiting purposes and tech talks and whatnot. So it was always a pleasure. And now I'm the founder and CEO of this company called Rockset, which is a real-time cloud database company. Think of us as like kind of real-time Snowflake, if you know what Snowflake has done to a cloud data warehousing. So we are a real-time database in the cloud. So again, the connections to UW is great. I think 3 out of the first 5 employees of Rockset are from Wisconsin-Madison. We all didn't were in that school at the same time, but I think the foundations and all the hard work that goes behind building the product, having a product vision, and the people that have really shaped what Rockset is today, I would trace it back to not just the what I personally benefited, but everybody else that has also been part of the founding team at Rockset have benefited from. So yeah, I owe a lot back to Wisconsin. So I'm very, very happy to give back in any way I can. And so if any of these answers in this context is useful for any of you, that will make my day. So without further ado, back to you, Tom, to start the panel. You're on mute, Tom.
I am on mute. You're right. You need one of these cards that says you're on mute. So, you know, three people from different departments, ECE, business, CS, gone off. All of you sort of have dabbled in sort of learning about industry and different things, whether that was early days of Facebook or Intuit or, you know, a variety of things. In your case, Ram, what, for the people out here thinking about how they, you know, if they're students today or if they're entrepreneurs, you know, do you, anybody can answer this, what kind of advice can you give them to say, hey, the path that you took, what you learned, or, you know, if you look back on this time now, you know, would you have had the courage to start a company or the knowledge to start a company straight out of your studies? Anybody want to tackle that?
I can start with, I mean, I guess I could start with mine if that's cool. I think I had a very different, having been now an entrepreneur, a very fantastical perception of what it actually meant to be an entrepreneur. I think everybody loves to be in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur, and then when you get in it, you're like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I think my thing with this, and Ram maybe can touch on this too, was everybody thinks they need to have the right idea. And it is, again, it's a combination of the idea and the team, and there's like a perfect secret sauce to really getting the catalyst there in place. For me, it was always just being inherently curious about stuff that I was interested in. And so that's what I've always allowed me to sort of drive the decisions I've made, whether it's ventures I'm working on, people I work with, you know. And so I think where I would encourage, because when I was 19 and 20, I thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't necessarily know what I was all about and what I truly found was interesting. So I needed to get exposure to a couple of those things before I took the leap. And part of it, I guess, was fear, just being a little vulnerable. There's a lot there, you know. It takes a hit to your reputation, and I think oftentimes you fall into this trap of thinking that you need to get the grade, or there's this threshold or public expectation that you have that people hold you up to a higher standard. And I think that came for me personally. It came with maturity and just kind of getting to a place where you no longer care what the world thinks about you. And I think the combination and the intersection of being more mature and, again, continuing to be curious, led me down a path to building something that I really love. And then touching on that piece of it, I really do think people talk about passion. We've been working on Disco for almost 7 years, and it's hard. And so you either have to be really interested in what you're doing and really passionate about what you're doing to build something of value. So, you know, you'll see a lot of people that are looking for a quick flip or are chasing major trends. And obviously, like in many cases that works and you get a pretty nice financial outcome. But you know, if that doesn't pan out, and you find yourself in a situation where you're not exactly happy with what you're doing or who you're doing it with, it's hard, and it can take a hit on you. So I think I've been fortunate enough. It's been hard work, but I think that because I'm doing something that I really love and something that I really believe in, and am genuinely really interested in culture and organizational development and, you know, fostering connection, I think, yeah, it's been good for me. I don't know if you guys have your own personal stories, and apologies to get all vulnerable here in halfway through, but just sharing a couple of my anecdotes.
Let's go. Ram, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm just riffing on a little bit of what Justin said here quick. I think the keys are, I think, to be curious, to be optimistic. I think entrepreneurs, one of the key common traits among entrepreneurs, successful ones certainly, they are relentlessly optimistic. They have to be, because you are going to run into roadblocks. and frankly, pessimism doesn't really solve that many problems, but being optimistic, certainly pragmatically optimistic, is a lot more of a positive mindset, not only because it empowers you to go through barriers, but also inspires others to go through barriers with you. And part of being an entrepreneur is actually being a leader and helping others join the party. And then third, I think, is to have conviction. You have to believe that what you're doing is really valuable, is going to change somebody's life. If it changes, especially if you've experienced it in firsthand, like what Justin had mentioned earlier, in that he was, what he had experienced personally as in working in different areas of his career, saw the need for a certain type of solution that he knew he would also enhance his own personal ability, personal and professional lives, right? And I think if I build this for myself, it could actually help others. I think that's a really valuable way to actually start a business, and it's a very classical way. I would, add to that piece about passion. There's a Stanford professor who I know who will say, you don't get good at something you're passionate about. You get passionate about something you're good at, or you spend a lot of time at. And you ultimately, if you really spend a lot of time at something, you will develop that passion for it. Hopefully, ultimately, I would say Justin's probably in Venkat, your case as well, you're passionate about what you're doing because you spent a lot of time developing some kind of an expertise and affinity to what you're doing or what you're building. So, but really, I think I line it back to curiosity, optimism, and conviction.
So Ram, there was one question for you specifically about the company you started around optics.
Yep.
And did you have to create your own lab there? Did you partner with anybody to do that? So.
We actually built our own fab. So we built we called it like basically gases in, products out. So we built for those of you who know, like semiconductor manufacturing, you have basically reactors to grow and to basically grow your wafers. So we had our own reactors in-house that we would grow this out on the substrates. We dice and cleave and test it, and then go through all the packaging process to ultimately put it into something, and then do all of our own in-house reliability testing and everything to make sure it could go into a telecom fiber optic line that could be buried undersea for 20 years, right? Over time, there were some things after we understood what we should all have in-house and what we should probably, what we could source from a third party, we would do. At the same time as we were building, and then in terms of partnership, at the same time as we were building our own fab, we got prototypes out of a university fab. In this case, it was the University of Southern California, where we had some relationships with the fab there, where we tested our own prototypes, and so that we didn't have to wait 9 months for equipment to come in, and then another 3-4 months until we actually got the fab up and running. So we were able to build some prototypes and get an MVP out before we had our fab in. So in those aspects, we partnered, but by and large, at the end of the day, anything that we felt was going to be part of our own core competency, we owned. So.
That's all right. Thanks. Hey, Venkat, you were at Facebook, early employee there. That certainly helped get some financial independence for yourself along the way. But at some point in time, you said, "Hey, I want to do this myself." What motivated you there, and how did you fund that? What did you do to get that funding initially, and then you just raised $40 million in the middle of COVID? What's that secret about? How did you do that? So.
Thank you. So, both cases of me, leaving my first job, Oracle, where there were just wonderful, wonderful people I was working with, learning a lot from, and seeking another opportunity, came from the same kind of mindset, which was, often probably called growth mindset. Carol Dweck wrote a book about it. You should all read that. It's just that things got very comfortable, and I got very uncomfortable. Right. It felt like I played this video game before, and that was really that feeling that almost looking at life as like a relentless pursuit of learning opportunities, and endless, learning opportunities, and then just wanted to challenge myself in a different setting. And at that time, when I was telling my parents that I'm going to quit my Oracle job, that they know what Oracle is, and go to Facebook, and they were all like, "What is this? Is it like Orkut?" That was the most popular question I would get. So I think I was very fortunate. I went there to learn. My primary motivation to go to Facebook was to learn things that my previous job wouldn't, had given me an opportunity to learn. And it was a very good bargain. I thought, after 8 years, I thought it was a tremendous learning opportunity, not only on the technical side, but on the management and leadership and all the other opportunities that I could consistently look at the opportunities at Facebook and say every year there was something that was very important for the company that I was interested in learning. And I was the least qualified person to work on that. But they still were foolish enough to let me go because they were confident that I'll learn quickly how to, do whatever it takes to make that initiative successful. And I think that was allowed me, again, kept me there for 8 years, which I thought was way longer than what I would have expected, when I started. But again, I think at that point, around 2015, Facebook got very, very big and things got super comfortable that I got uncomfortable again. And when I left, I had no idea what I was going to do next. Rockset was not founded by, or any of a personal financing or anything like that. It was genuinely, I spent a year leaving Facebook, and during those 8 years, the world had completely changed, right? We knew, at least I left Facebook, I knew what problems were solving within the boundaries of Facebook. I call it like Disneyland because it's not real. A lot of the things are made up, right? The problems and the scale are not real. There are maybe 3 companies in the world that has that scale, and Facebook is one of them. So it's a great learning opportunity. But I spent about a year, maybe I would have talked to maybe 50, 60 different people, and genuinely curious. I had nothing to sell, I was really listening and trying to understand, how do they solve problems and what problems are they thinking about? And in hindsight, it looks like a discovery, to find an opportunity or anything like that. But that was really not my intention. I really wanted to become relevant. I wanted to understand how the world works. And it was really, that was the genesis of Rockset. And so when we went to go raise money, it was not just who we were and what we had done before. It was what problem were we going to go tackle. And is that problem worth solving for the world? And all of that learnings came the year I spent, after, not having a job, after Facebook and before founding the company. And so there was no question about the reputation of the founding team on, are these the people to solve that problem? But really, what is still important is what problem are you solving and who cares, right? Why should anyone care? If you don't have a good thesis about that, and why now, why you, and for all those questions that investors think about, I feel like the one thing that was easy for us with reputation and the context that we had with Facebook was, why you? Because they're like, hey, go talk to my previous manager at Facebook or whatever, and they gave us good references, and they happen to be the CTO of one of the interesting, technology companies like Facebook, so that's good. That helps. That doesn't hurt, but that is necessary in my mind, but not sufficient. But I think you need to have a pretty clear idea on, what problem are you solving and why does it have to be solved and why now? Those are the kinds of questions that I think you need a clear answer for. You asked about COVID. Maybe it's a good transition to start talking about that because it's in the title of the panel. So I'll talk a little bit about what happened. So we were in R&D for the first 2-3 years, came out of stealth and became generally available. And it was COVID literally happened the first quarter. We were trying to bootstrap our enterprise sales team. And so this was, by March it hit, and by Q2 we were like, we have no idea what's going to happen. So what we really saw was that people didn't just disappear. It wasn't like suddenly like there's nobody here, but we just saw almost every potential opportunity that we were working with kind of go into wait and see mode. They were not saying no, they were not saying yes. And they kind of went into a little bit of like, I don't know if I'm going to have my job 2 months from now. I don't know if my company is going to be around. I don't know if the project is going to be around. So let me, I just have to wait and see. And so we got really, really good advice around the time, especially from, some of the key folks at Sequoia Capital and Greylock Partners. They've just been amazing investors for us. and they have amazing people. And the biggest thing that they told us was to invest back in the product. If you have this opportunity and you're not having to think about layoffs and whatnot because you're quite early stage, which we were fortunate enough, to be honest, if it had to happen, if COVID had to hit us at the early, years of in some point in our company journey, I actually think these 2 quarters were probably the best one where we could get away with. And so what we actually ended up doing was to reinvest a lot of energy back into core product building, sharpening our go-to-market, and really reinvest and build a lot more content and just come out of it with just a much stronger product with a lot of clarity on the go-to-market, because we're not just chasing, one POC after another, and we kind of got that kind of like calm before the storm type of couple of months in March, April, May. And what had also happened around that time is, like, by June, I feel like America, was open for business again. All the companies that we were working with, even though it was 2 months of kind of like lull, they all came back. The companies didn't go anywhere. The projects are still there. Their jobs are still there, and they wanted to make decisions. And they had learned to adapt to work remotely, and so all of our customers came back, and in some ways they had to now catch up because they're 2 months behind in a lot of their goals. And one of the key value prop of Rockset and why Rockset is a better cloud database is that it reduces the time it takes for you to build an application. One of our customers says, Rockset took their 6-month roadmap and shrunk it to a single afternoon, right? And so when that kind of value prop, and again, that goes back to us compressing, reinvesting in the product during the COVID quarters. So that really helped us. So now I feel like we come out of this whole COVID with a stronger product, a sharper go-to-market. And then as soon as, our customers started engaging with us again, we were able to go and close a nice number of deals. And, our investors saw that I think was a very good validation that you're solving the problem, the product is working, your customers love your product, and you have the best product in the market right now for this particular thing that they are estimating to grow. So then after that, it was a much easier conversation. But had we not invested in the product in the earlier quarters, we wouldn't have had the Q3 and the projected Q4 kind of numbers that we're looking at right now. And that was really what got the attention of the investors. The other thing is also very, we're very fortunate to have is, like, I think our investors are also extremely aligned with the long-term mindset that the founders have. And that also helps a lot. So when you are trying to match and start working with an investor, it's really important that their philosophy of what it takes to build a company and what kind of time frame that they are thinking about needs to be aligned with you as a founder. And we're just very, very fortunate to have a couple that also have a very, very long-term, oriented mindset, amazing people on our board that helps us, through these discussions. So yeah, it was a combination of a lot of those things that allowed us to be able to raise, at this point, I feel like COVID doesn't matter. If you have a good idea, good product, and can show traction, I'm sure you can raise money.
Well, congratulations, Venkat. That's amazing. So Justin, over to you. How do you feel about that comment that Venkat just made? Do you agree? If you have a good product, you can do things. We do have a question from the participants as well. How is COVID affecting your business? What makes you stand out amongst other products for Disco? So, maybe you need to come off mute and give your side of that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think there's been, and I can touch on the question in the chat as well. So I think for us, the shift to remote work, when we launched Disco back in 2014, we started as we were the first application on Slack. So we literally took their open API and we stood up what was at the time, the first wave of trying to figure out how to meet employees in where they're working to encourage people to give more real-time feedback. And I almost feel like we were too early to the market because we were like, we were chasing a trend, but we didn't really know who our ultimate buyer was. And I think it took a while for us, if you've ever studied or read the book Crossing the Chasm, you sort of see these, like, you see this wave of early adopters and then there's sort of this lull, and you've got to wait for the rest of the market to get there. And I think that's almost what we saw. It was like we had a lot of these early stage companies that were sort of taking a shot and saying like, oh, there's something interesting here. But we couldn't quite bridge the gap. Like we couldn't get to a point where the HR executive, who ultimately discovered was our core buyer, was like, oh, I can run all of our feedback processes in these existing tools. And so for us, it was, I think there were two things, and it's related to what Venkat said about the why now. The trend that we were seeing was Slack was exploding as a platform, but the business need for Disco wasn't quite there yet. And I think when COVID hit, overnight, we saw teams that were going wall to wall with these systems because it was now a requirement. We weren't in our physical offices. And so our monthly active usage, literally, I think it like 40x'd. It was crazy. And we started to see large scale companies accelerating their own internal digital or cultural transformation efforts, and overnight rolling out Microsoft Teams to 140,000 people, or 440,000 people. And it was like, oh my gosh, our moment has arrived. And so we were just 4 years too early. And now it's like, okay, sometimes it is just staying alive and staying in the game for things to kind of materialize. And I think our vision was always kind of consistent, and we saw what we wanted the future of work to be. And I think there was a lot of question of like, what will be the role of messaging? A lot of folks in the early days believed it would be the new operating system for the enterprise. It's sort of how apps run through, how we communicate and chat and engage. And, and others said email's not going anywhere. And I think we're sort of in this world now where it is a hybrid. But yeah, to that point, I would say the why now question has been big. And right now it is sort of our moment. It has arrived. And so now the big question that we're trying to help our customers answer is, okay, how does my culture look in a world where, we're not all sitting around the same desk? And so I want to touch on the question. I think it was, where was the question in here? It was about I think it was around differentiation. I'm missing it somewhere now.
Yeah. I moved it. I'm sorry, y'all.
Oh, here we go. What is the current challenges and next steps of Disco? How did COVID affect the business and makes Disco stand out from the rest of the bots? So I think the first thing that we had to do, initially we were called GrowBot. So that in itself was a branding challenge where we're like, okay, there is a finite amount of value in the customer's mind around what a bot is. So we rebranded to Disco, which by itself is interesting as a marketing statistic. It's like boosting perceived value. The second, and I can't hit home how, I know there's a lot of technical folks in this call, and it's not just to validate my business degree, because I do think I did add value, but marketing and positioning is so critical. It's so critical as far as just establishing your message, understanding who you're going after, being really crisp about your segmentation. And so for us, that was the exercise. I think we actually let the term of the bot almost dictate our success in the early days. And it wasn't really, there wasn't weight behind it. So over time, we started to really iterate on our positioning and our messaging, and realize that we had to provide a broader amount of services to help not only just the perception of Disco stand up as a platform, but also just solve more important problems for our customers. So yeah, I don't know, that's sort of a long-winded answer to that, but yeah, I'd say the summary is COVID, in a weird way, has helped us accelerate and get to our moment faster, and help us with the why now. But that said, to Venkat's point, a lot of our customers have been impacted. They've been hurt and impacted. So it's been tough to watch overnight. One of our largest customers operates a ton of co-working spaces, and just having to lay off 80% of their staff in a week. It's hard to watch that. So and it did ultimately hit our books a little bit, but we were fortunate enough again to retain all of our customers through the pandemic, and I think are on a pretty good upward trajectory. So
cool. Thank you, Justin. We've got a couple of other questions I want to make sure we do hit at some point to some a level. One about undergraduate founders. Anybody want to give some advice to undergraduate founders and how they can sort of position themselves to have clients take them seriously? Not that that's not a problem that you have just in any startup. I mean, maybe you can think about it from the perspective of, do clients take any startup seriously? So I don't know, Ram, you want to give that a go? Or?
Yeah, sure. So especially as you're, as an early stage investor, in particular, what you're trying to do ultimately, so I'm going to put on the investor's hat and then say what I'm looking for from a founder, whether you're an undergraduate founder or somebody who is experienced, right? I have an idea of how a space is going to evolve, or I have a vision for the future. That vision for the future is supported by a thesis or some hypotheses that I can either validate or invalidate with data. Now, then I need to, if my hypothesis is validated, then maybe I can go and explore that space more. The process of acquiring data is then made by investing in a team that is going to build a product or offer a service that then captures data initially, that then tests or invalidates those particular theses and how that space is going to evolve. Now so the process so when they talk about, it's about team, especially at the early stage, it's then comes to, is this team going to be the one that's going to be able to build something that's going to, given the market is there and exists and could be receptive to such an idea or such a test, is this team going to be the one to build a product or service that can either invalidate or validate the idea, or if the idea is invalidated, can they go build something else or explore a different space, which is obviously known as pivoting. So then it's incumbent on you as the founder, when you kind of pitch that idea, is to prove to me that yes, you are somebody who I should consider investing in to go explore a space and capture this data. It's also now the advantage that somebody who is experienced already in the field as a practitioner, as say Venkat was in the space of databases, where he can come in based on his Oracle experience and his Facebook experience, come and say, I'm a world expert in this, therefore I am very qualified in building the future of databases, is that I believe he's going to build something that's quickly that's going to test or invalidate these hypotheses or what he is claiming. But that said, ultimately you want to be able to, whether you're an undergraduate expert or an experienced or undergraduate student or an experienced practitioner, is be able to demonstrate that you have some knowledge or capabilities that uniquely set you apart from others in terms of being able to realize a particular vision. In this case, it starts with testing data, building a POC, testing hypotheses, acquiring data that's going to enable you to capture its customers and start to build out and validate a market. Like I would say, for example, you see undergraduates, right? Obviously B2C is rife with examples of people who built something because they had insight, even at the undergraduate level, what Zook did in terms of building Facebook, for example. But then there are other cases in B2B. When you think about Stripe, the Collison brothers founding Stripe, even though they were undergrads or undergraduate equivalents when they went to go do it, because they had an insight about a space based on their knowledge. So it all comes to, can you demonstrate this type of this type of experience, which is going to, or capabilities, which is going to be able to test your hypotheses. Certainly in my case, I was certainly advantaged in going out to build a semiconductor fab after doing a PhD in the area and actually spending time in Bell Labs versus me if I would have had the same idea in undergrad. But that also, of course, is a different space and vectors. And I think people, especially in the software space, with a certain set of ideas, because you can test things a lot faster, you can. It's a lot easier to get funded if you're an undergrad. It all depends on the idea and ultimately your ability to execute.
So one of the things, Justin, you didn't mention was that you said that your business trebled last year as well and doubled this year. One of the things that I find a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about is what are the expectations when they take investments? what are the expectations of growth? You know, that often catches people. We didn't talk about this question before, but listening to Ram talk about, you know, undergraduate students and how hard it is sometimes maybe to find the time, and you go out and you're trying to build something. But even later in life, you've taken some money, whether that's angel money or not, and how fast are your investors expecting you to grow, and how happy are they when you treble your business?
Oh, Tom, put me on the spot here with Ram on the phone. No, I just I would say it's been interesting for us. I mean, there's mixed feelings across. I think what I've had, you know, I think SAP in particular has been great because Ram in particular is a very strategic leader, and he, like you said, he sees where things are going. And I don't, you know, not to speak poorly of many other venture capitalists, but many of them chase trends and are looking for obviously a bigger return. But I think what's special about in SAP's case is like Ram is more connected to the business as a corporate. And so I think that in particular it provides a very unique lens as how a company actually operates versus having to, you know, report to LPs. I will say our initial investors, so we went through 500 startups through their accelerator. So they're at the seed stage. It's really, you know, it's a concept. They have to believe in the founders, and we had some early traction. I think we had 10 paying customers, but they had conviction that we were the team to solve the problem. And then I think our initial investor, who was Phil Libin, the founder of Evernote, and now today they actually just launched, the founder of So their presentation app, doing some really cool things. He was a very, very product focused investor and had built a really beautiful experience with Evernote and valued the quality of the offering versus, and he was even more of a non-traditional VC. So prior to having started, was a general partner at General Catalyst. And so Phil's benchmark for us was always, it wasn't the financial return out of the gate. It was, how do you build something that people really love and use your NPS as the guide rails for knowing that you're solving an important problem that they couldn't imagine, they couldn't imagine any other way. And so now that's Phil's perspective, and he's been very supportive. And it's not to say our other investors haven't. The others are a little more traditional. And so it's interesting when we have our board meetings, because I think there's often kind of a split perspective on the focus. And I'd say the others, that when you take venture capital, there is a very high expectation that you're going to hit those milestones in a fast fashion. And I think especially when you place an early bet and it takes time for you to get there, you've got to be scrappy. So in our story, we kind of shifted halfway through where we're like, oh my gosh, if we're going to raise follow-on capital, default alive is profitability. So for any founder that is listening to this, or potential founder, advice I would provide is find a way to make money as fast as you can with the concept that you have, because default alive is profitability, and that's what keeps the lights on, and that's where we needed to go. And we initially, to grow and really get ourselves out there and have a beachhead, we gave our product away for free for far too long. I would have flipped the revenue switch a lot faster. And now that we've done that,
That's what the sales guy always says, by the way.
Yeah, I look back now and I just think, oh my gosh, what were we doing? And you can always, it's Monday morning quarterback, thinking of why we did the things that we did. But after a while, growth only gets you so far as usage. And again, we're an enterprise SaaS. So I think the benchmark for what we were striving to is to raise a Series A. Like we wanted to raise a Series A, and it's taken us longer to get there as a result. And I think now we're in a much better position. Even if we had raised the Series A, 12 months in, I don't even know if we would have known what the heck to do with the money, to be honest. So I think now it's like, okay, a lot of our questions are, the revenue's been growing, we're profitable, the why now piece is there. And so it's almost like before you take the money, I think you really have to have a good sense of what you want to do with it and that the timing is right. Because if you don't, you're going to be sitting in many uncomfortable board positions for quarter on quarter on quarter, trying to answer questions that you just don't have all the cards to turn over. So the expectations are high, and the more money you take, one of my good friends is a founder of a company called Webflow. And they raised $72 million as a Series A. And I was like, man, you got all your problems are solved, right? And he's no. The problems just become different and bigger and higher expectations. And I think, and Venkat, you can probably speak to that. I mean, the expectations are high, growth expectations are high, especially the more capital that you build. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Justin. We need to wrap up, but Venkat, any comments on that or any final advice as we wrap up?
No, I think Justin and Ram covered really quick. Undergrad, grad, I don't think it matters. I feel like if you don't have reputation built up, starting a capital intensive business is hard. So stay away. If you have ideas that are capital light, it's easier. Don't let any other lack of experience hold you back. But starting a capital intensive business or right out of school as an undergrad might be very, very tough because there's no credibility that you have built up. And in terms of raising capital and growth expectations, I feel like you should not raise A, as exactly what Justin said, if you don't know what you're going to do with the money, or if you don't know what it's going to take to get to at least B. So once you see a path to a B round and you know what metrics to hit and what you need to do and what time frame, you work backwards and then you raise your A. In fact, ideally, you should be able to see all the way to C by the time you're raising your A and be able to see a couple of steps ahead. It's almost like playing pool. So, think about what the next shot is going to be. And so I think everything Justin said is valid, but we could have raised an A round, let's say even, we were fortunate enough that there were, very, very interested investors in 2019. We chose not to. And it was exactly the same thing that Justin said. I don't know what to do with that money, or I don't see a path to the next step. And so that's kind of how we also think about it. So everything Justin said is spot on.
So I see we're running out of time. Laura, Ram, any last 15 seconds worth of stuff from you?
I will. I saw the question in the chat, and I'll try to answer in 10 seconds. And build fast, fail quick, iterate for startups in hardware. I would say it's definitely harder. You can take some shortcuts around emulation, around FPGAs, but the net is that easier to do fail fast and iterate quickly when it comes to software than hardware. But but you know what that means? The barriers to entry are harder. They're higher. And if you can overcome that barrier to entry, you actually have a moat. So there are reasons to go into software or to hardware just because it is hard. There are going to be fewer people who can attack that space. So if you see an opportunity, it doesn't hurt to try to go for it.
A great story with another faculty member at Wisconsin with Simple Machines, building a great hardware product for machine learning. Just released their first chip. So, and if that's successful, we're going to have a very big moat. He'll have a very successful company. So, I want to thank all of you for your time today. I really appreciate this. It's been wonderful getting to know you. I think for everybody in the audience, these are three amazing alums we have at Wisconsin, really rocking it, if I may say that, in the world. And as an alum and a successful entrepreneur in my own right, I can say that you get a great learning, a great basis coming from Wisconsin, a great opportunity. It's grounded in a great university, but optimism about what you can do. And these three have shown some amazing things that you can do. And I wish everybody great success. Over to you, Laura, to wrap things up.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom, and your whole team at Cetus for bringing this content to our week of programs through WARF and D2P. I do want to point all of you to the resources at innovate.wis.edu and warf.org if you're interested in learning more about what you heard about today, past sessions, and people that you can talk to help you get started on all of the issues that we covered today. So thank you all so much, and we hope to see you at future events. Good night, everybody, and stay safe.